Florida State and the ACC have already finished their mediation sessions, and here's how it went.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I mean, did you really think the mediator appointed there in Florida was actually going to get the two sides to hold hands and sing Kumbaya? We'll talk about how it went and how it's going. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. It's a brand new mobile game that's completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. So, Kenton, are you shocked that the mediation that was ordered by the Honorable Judge Cooper in Florida was not successful?
I'm gasping. I am utterly baffled. These two sides who've been so amicable all the way along the way can't agree. What has the world come to? What has the world? Of course, I'm not shocked. We all knew that this was exactly how mediation was going to go. We all knew that it was going to be a sit down and it was going to be, hey, can you meet me at $500 million? No. Can you meet me at zero? No. All right. Back to the courtroom we go, friends. Like, what are we doing here? Jim Phillips specifically said, I will fight until the bitter end. What do you think that means? I'm sorry. I will fight till the end means till a mediator comes in and ends the debauchery, at which point in time we'll have to be decent and in order and go ahead and give up the fight. Knock it off. Let's just knock it off.
Here's the ex-post from Pete Nakos, who covers sports and sports business for On3 Sports. He writes, Florida State and the ACC have informed Leon County Court, that's the court in Tallahassee, Florida, that they met for mediation and did not resolve their dispute. He adds settlement discussions will continue, and that's the long and the short of it for what's detailed there in the official court filing, which was obtained by multiple media outlets. And so again, just to emphasize, doesn't mean a settlement is impossible. It just means they didn't have enough common ground at this point to actually settle it this soon through mediation. And so you talked about, Kenton, about Commissioner Jim Phillips of the ACC vowing to fight for as long as it takes. Would it be fair to say that the ACC has more to lose here than Florida State? And I'm not saying Florida State would love to stay in the ACC for another 12 years. Obviously, they clearly wouldn't. They're thinking about all the revenue that they're losing compared to what's being granted to schools from the SEC and the Big Ten. But staying in the ACC for Florida State probably wouldn't be bad as the ACC losing Florida State and Clemson and who knows what else if they don't win here. I think the ACC has more to lose, and that's why they need to fight tooth and nail.
The ACC has more, therefore they have more to lose. I mean, that's the objective. Like, you know, it's like it's like when you see people driving very recklessly and they're driving an old beat up car, and it's like they don't have the same things at stake that some other people on the road do. You know, it's just not the same type of situation where you're sitting up here saying, oh man, like if they crash that car, they're out of $500, as opposed to like if you crash a G-Wagon or something like that, your insurance company is just gonna pretend like they don't know you. You crashed a what? Hey, I know you paid in every month, but we'll talk to you later, buddy. But that's legitimately what it is. Not to say that Florida State is an old beat up car, but by comparison, you're talking about a conference which includes double-digit teams. Don't get me wrong. Florida State is a massive brand. They're a massive team. The ACC definitely has more to lose because they are a conference. It is not just one institution, two institutions. They stand to lose everything if things go downhill from here. As opposed to Florida State, where even worst case scenario for them, they just don't get as much money as they would like. But, you know, it's not like a, oh my God, how did we end up here type of moment.
By the way, also on this loaded episode of Locked On ACC, we're going to talk about this crazy story about NIL money from Saudi Arabia. And it's not directly an ACC story, but believe me, this could become a thing in the ACC and anywhere in college football. We'll talk a little bit more about how the real winners so far in these ACC versus Florida State and versus Clemson battles, the real victors so far are the lawyers. We could also talk about a prediction that a national media member has made for who's going to win the ACC. But going back to this legal story, Kenton, if we can characterize the ACC having more to lose here, I think it's even easier to diagnose that Florida State has a lot more to gain by getting out, right? Because, I mean, if the ACC wins, like their ultimate victory would be we keep Florida State and Clemson trapped for the next 12 years. I don't expect that to happen, but that would be the ultimate victory for the ACC, which would just mean the status quo, right? They can keep going with the same teams. They can keep going for sure with the same TV deal because, you know, ESPN probably wouldn't opt out if they know that they're keeping Clemson and Florida State in. Whereas Florida State, they have so much more to gain because they're looking at that 30, 40 million of extra revenue that they could be getting somewhere else. Even if they have to pay a heftier price just to get out, they would view it as a long-term win, potentially being able to land in the Power 2.
I strongly disagree. I think that the ACC has much more to gain than Florida State. Yes, the status quo is not supposed to be that much of a game, but when you think about what the ACC's current status quo is, I mean, that's a hell of a lot to gain by keeping it. We're talking about, and I don't believe that this is up on the block, whether or not Clemson and Florida State are there. But we are talking about, again, this is my belief, not a fact, the idea of, like you said, the TV deal with ESPN. You're talking about hundreds of millions up front. We're not talking about the long-term ramifications of if you end up having all these teams have to basically go back to Bally Sports or wherever else to make all these local regional deals because there's no grand TV deal nationally. Yeah. So when you talk about who has the most to gain here, the ACC, and think about this other part of this. Let's say that these teams do get crazy and desperate, and they say, we'll do anything to leave so bad, we're going to pony up the money to leave right now, and they lose in court. You're looking at the ACC gaining about $1 billion, somewhere close, from two teams having to pay nearly $500,000. You know what I mean? Like the ACC stands to gain a ton from these court proceedings going in its favor. That's just, don't get me wrong. Florida State does stand to gain a lot. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, yeah, even if best case scenario, they gain nothing. But the ACC is not just about survival. It's about how big of a deal can you command when you say, hey, Clemson and Florida State may want to leave. They're stuck like Chuck. They are right here with us. What can you ask for then?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Florida State's lawyers don't exactly want to rush this process along. When we come back, you will not believe how much Florida State's lawyers have allegedly already been paid, and we're only about 8 months into this process so far. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. We are proudly brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Locked On ACC fans, if you want to take a moment, download this app, and I'm telling you, you're going to love it as much as Kenton and I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of your favorite team? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football team, it'll also shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On ACC fans. Use the promo code Locked On CFB, all caps, all one word, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it's going to get your team off to a strong start. So download the game just by visiting ultimate-cfb.com or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. And thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen to your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure to check out Kenton and I on the other awesome shows that we do. Kenton co-hosts Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes. Between the two of us, we've got your NC State and your Miami Hurricanes covered. And, of course, we cover everything else right here on Locked On ACC. So this is pretty wild. Let me see if I can pull up this X post for those watching the video version. I will, of course, read it for those listen to the audio version. This account, again, who spends 25 hours a day tweeting about conference realignment, Big Ten information at Genetics56 on X. I think I made that a little too big there. He says, we are approaching $3 million in FSU legal fees. A Freedom of Information Act request by a War Chant member showed us $2.7 million spent so far on Florida State legal fees. Now, unfortunately, we don't. Maybe someone needs to make a Freedom of Information request on the ACC's legal fees. Although if that comes out of North Carolina, the laws are a little different than Florida. So we don't know what the ACC has spent. I assume it's something similar to that, Kenton. But Florida State approaching $3 million in legal fees. We've been doing this for 8 months. If this drags on for another year or year and a half, this might get close to $10 million in legal fees by the time this is done. And that's just for one side.
Donno, we done messed around and went into the wrong profession. We surely went into the wrong profession. We knew that there was a lot of money being spent here. We knew that this was a situation where the lawyers were going to be happy regardless of whether Florida State wins or ACC wins. Somebody was going to be very happy to see, hey, listen, my billable hours, they're going to be through the roof. They're going to be through the roof trying to argue whether or not this contract says you can leave scot-free or not. And so we are at a point in these proceedings where we still feel like we're in its infancy and we're approaching $3 million already. Yeah. You and I have talked about the fact that these court cases take years more often than not. If this court case takes a year, because at this point, the starting of these cases was January this year in terms of like the actual start. January of this year. We can even backtrack and say maybe December. December to now is what? 9 months?
8 months, right? That was what I had. That's what I had originally calculated on, was based on December. So we're somewhere in the 8-month range.
Okay, so we're at about 8 months. So 3/4 of a year, or I'm sorry, 2/3 of a year rather. I don't know where I got 3/4 from. 2/3 of a year, and we're looking at $3 million already. Hoo-wee. This is going to be one of those moments that we look back at as this is no pun intended, a seminal moment in terms of what happened with realignment. And then in terms of what happened with this university, this conference, because I'm going to tell you, somebody's going to lose big here. Somebody's not going. I very highly doubt that this is a situation where it ends up being like, hey, we all get what we want. You know, we got to let you go, but you pay a decent amount. I have a feeling somebody's going to lose majorly in this one, and I'm very interested to see which side it is.
Well, you got to wonder, of course, what happens on the field this year, and you and I probably care more about that than we do about this legal stuff. Although I'm very intrigued by the legal stuff. How about this prediction from Greg McElroy from Always College Sports? He actually has, Kenton, Florida State versus Miami in the ACC Championship game, and he's got Miami over Florida State to win that game. In his words, there's more known commodities on the Miami roster. They've been able to upgrade it at every position. And, you know, I don't when it comes to the commodities on the roster, like there's a reason why Miami has more preseason all ACC selections than any other team in the conference. I don't think anybody doubts that the talent is there. And I even say this as a guy who went to Miami and covers Miami. I just have a wait and see approach because I have faith. I have faith in the players, and I do have faith in the coaches, probably more than a lot of people do. But for me, it's just about putting it all together, right? Because you do have, which is also the case with Florida State, a lot of new faces on both sides. But Miami's got a lot to put together, and, you know, fingers crossed that they can stay healthy and that the talent actually aligns this year.
Listen, I hate to say it, and Greg McElroy, shout out to him. He's a college football lifer pretty much. Good for him. The reality is simple. As much as I want to believe in Miami, the media has done the best job we can. We ain't always got it right in terms of who is the best team and who should have the most all ACC selections. For example, last year, do you remember the team that led in terms of total all ACC selections preseason?
Ooh, I don't.
Take a wild guess. Take a wild guess on who it was.
I don't know, Clemson?
Correct. And
Okay.
and where'd that get them? Where'd they end? You see what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day,
9 wins.
Don't get me wrong. And listen, 9 wins for Miami would be a good season. It would keep them away from that hot take I had on, hey, this guy, he may get up out of it. But in all seriousness, there is a point in time where I'm beyond wait and see with Miami because secretly I've always loved Miami. I've always loved Warren Sapp is the reason I always wanted to wear 99 growing up.
Wow.
I never wanted to wear any number other than 99 because of Warren Sapp. And when I found out that Warren Sapp ran with all these guys that were just as bad as he was at Miami, I'm like, oh man, that college. And then I found out how cool those guys were. I was like, oh my God, these are just, they have fun living on the edge and doing it their way. And yet, year after year after year, I would look up and say, oh, Miami's disappointed again. That sucks. Year after year after year, I would look up and see that this team wasn't it. So at some point in time, Greg McElroy, shout out to you again. Much love to you. I'm beyond wait and see. I'm a full out pessimist. Until Miami goes wrong, I'm sorry. I can't do it. I don't believe you. You need more people.
They're going to make a believer out of Kenton Gibbs this year, I'm telling you. Now, when we come back, for anyone having money problems, if you're looking for the big NIL score, if you're looking for some private equity, maybe you need some money to buy your way out of the conference that you're in, head on over to Saudi Arabia. Somebody already tried it. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, guys, and I'm not done with Game Time. I will never be done with Game Time because we're getting the best deals on tickets. This is the only ticket app that Kenton Gibbs and I use because we know we're getting the best prices, the best features, and the prices actually go down the closer you get to the event. I'm a procrastinator, and Game Time actually rewards me for that, which is usually a harmful character trait. Not in this case, guys. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible and incredible on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time's 50% off Labor Day offer, by the way, is going on for Diamondbacks Dodgers tickets. We'll talk about the details. Guys, I love the feature, the view your seat feature on Game Time. They give you a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. I love the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Guys, the all-in pricing is amazing. So also take a look at 50% off tickets to Dodgers at Diamondbacks game on Labor Day. It's exclusively on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Guys, you want to check out our Locked On conference previews. We've got them out for the ACC, for the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12. Make sure you're subscribing to Locked On College Football on YouTube, and you won't miss a second of the action. You want to be prepared for all the action coming up, which starts on Saturday, by the way. Florida State taking on Georgia Tech in Ireland. We've got you covered on our big conference previews. Kenton Gibbs and I were a big part of the ACC preview. Now, Kenton, this is not an ACC story, at least not yet, but this could become a thing anywhere. So I know that like taking money from the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia, the PIF, that's their sovereign wealth fund. I guess it's not technically illegal, but I think it would be frowned upon by a lot of Americans. I mean, I guess if Saudi Arabia turns you down, you can always go to China. If China turns you down, you can always try North Korea. It's not the best look. Colorado tried to do it. Okay. So this former Colorado assistant coach, Trevor Riley, after he resigned on August 1st, and apparently he's got no ill will towards Coach Prime or anybody on the football staff, but I guess he's got a bone to pick with the Colorado administration. This is a story from the Colorado Buffalo Sports Illustrated page. So Trevor Riley went on the record about trying to pull in funding for the school's 5430 NIL collective. He expressed to Sports Illustrated that there were no bad feelings between anyone with the program, but rather he was at odds with a few people in Colorado's administration. Riley said he spent time in the Middle East this past holiday season lobbying Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, known as PIF, for name, image, and likeness funding on behalf of Colorado football. A copy of what Riley says was in his resignation letter to CU Athletic Director Rick George and Sanders. That was reviewed by Sports Illustrated. He said, quote, "The arrangement was that because I did all the NIL work at Jackson and got us through, you guys would pay me a modest salary and make me the special teams coordinator, which should have freed up time for me to handle NIL activities. You paid me $90,000 last year, let me handle special teams. I did all this work in your name and was told to pursue it. I burned through all my contacts in my Mormon community," he said, "which is worth about $3 trillion. Now I can't get these people to answer my calls because I just found out today that none of my endeavors will happen," he said. "I even went to Saudi Arabia and got a meeting with the Saudis who were interested in pursuing business. I have email receipts to prove it, and you guys let it fall flat on its face." So I guess somebody decided that the Saudi Arabian money wasn't a good idea. But Kenton, I mean, if Colorado tried this, others might try to do something like this, and maybe not so much the NIL, which is more visible, but private equity. You could pretty easily get money from Saudi Arabia through some shell company and make it look like it's something else.
Yeah, this is so interesting because, I mean, and I hate to even be broaching on this subject because it feels so bizarro world that we are now talking about private equity from overseas coming in and kind of taking care of sports here. But this is kind of the way of the world now. Every dollar is being chased. Every bit of juice is being squeezed out of every fruit. It's so unfortunate to see that we have gone down this path with college athletics. And again, I'm going to say this because I know that the people are going to look at this and say, well, it's NIL money. If the players weren't getting paid, we wouldn't be here. Yeah. But again, this started with the coaches when they started getting paid these exorbitant salaries to where we had never seen anything like it before. And every state's highest paid state employee is a football or basketball coach at these schools. It started when Nike and Adidas and New Balance and Converse got into the college clothing apparel game and said, hey, we'll pay you X amount. Don't sit here and talk about the end result of, oh, the players are getting paid now, and that's why we're looking at this. No. Let's get to the root of this thing. When you let money get in for just a certain amount of people, you had to know it was going to spread, it was going to permeate, it was going to touch everything like the cancer that greed is. And that's where we are.
And this is something that the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund probably really wants, because for those who haven't been paying attention, they're heavily involved in international sports already. You've seen with Live Golf and the PGA Tour. You may be aware, if you're an international soccer fan, they own several European soccer clubs outright, and they have money invested in others. So this is something that people refer to as like sports washing. And it's, so the idea of maybe getting your hand in the cookie jar of college athletics, it'd probably be easier to do that. Like for the Saudis to get involved in the NFL would be more difficult because it's such a tight-knit group of owners that you could more easily block this from happening. But in college football, it's kind of every school for themselves here. So I could see college football as being another in for them in American sports. And again, it's like not illegal to take the oil money. They got a lot of money over there. It's not illegal, but it's something that probably a lot of Americans would frown upon. So it kind of depends on what kind of a PR hit you'd be willing to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the biggest thing. While we are talking about PR hit and all that, again, we live in America. At these, the attention span is about this long. We're going to be, folks are going to be upset at whichever team takes Saudi money first for all of 3 days. And then it's, well, that's still dear old state. Well, that's still my university. Well, that's still my team. And they've been my team forever. And I'm just, you can say what you want about us taking Saudi money, but we have a lazy river now. We wouldn't have had a lazy river otherwise. That's what this is going to turn into.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in. And by the way, the next time we speak, we're going to be reviewing a game, Florida State and Georgia Tech. If you missed our preview of that earlier this week, you can check it out on Locked On ACC. We sat down with Brian Smith from Locked On Knowles. Florida State will probably win. If they do, we'll talk about it. If they don't, we'll talk about it. We'll talk to you guys next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, go ahead.
And just a quick note to the listeners. By the time you are hearing the sound of my voice saying this, the he said, she said, the fan said will be up. It will be up. Donno and I are both firmly picking Florida State. I don't think that should surprise anybody. So the first week's edition of He Said, She Said, the fan said will be up. I know some of y'all are going to say it's very short notice. We know who's going to win this game, and we know it's going to be by a lot, okay? Now, if somebody want to take Georgia Tech and prove us wrong, if the fans want to go against the grain and take Georgia Tech and prove us wrong, we'll be very excited to see it. But anywho, we appreciate y'all, and come on back and keep voting on these teams.
We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.